My son, Leonard, died 15 years ago. But at 3 a.m., I got a text from his number. It was 3:04 in the morning, to be exact. That awful, dead silent hour when every bad memory feels closer. The phone was on my nightstand, and the vibration was so loud in the stillness it nearly sent me out of bed. I fumbled for my glasses, annoyed. Who on earth would be texting me? I tapped the screen. The message was right there, stark and white. Mom, it's freezing here. My heart didn't just pound. It stopped. It completely stopped and then slammed against my ribs so hard I gasped. I must be dreaming. Or worse, I was having a stroke. This was that moment people talk about, the confusion before the real damage sets in. I squeezed my eyes shut, counted to 3, and opened them again. The message was still there. Mom, it's freezing here. My first real thought was scam. A cruel, disgusting scam. Someone had gotten my number, hacked an old account, and was trying to torment me. My fingers were cold, shaking as I tried to block the number. But I hesitated. I looked at the name at the top of the screen. It just said Leonard, not Leonard's old number or some strange email address. Just Leonard. The same contact entry that had been in my phone for, well, forever. I'd never had the heart to delete it. I stared at the words again. Mom, it's freezing here. And that's when I saw it. The detail that made the blood drain from my face. He hadn't capitalized Mom. And he'd used his old double dots at the end of the sentence. Leonard always did that. He'd type Mom or home soon. I used to tease him about it, asking him why he was always trailing off. He'd just laugh and say it was his style. It was a tiny thing, a stupid little quirk, but it was his. No scammer could know that. Not that. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. My whole body was trembling. This was impossible. My son died on I-10 near Phoenix. He was gone. I'd held his cold hand in the hospital. I'd picked out his casket. I'd watched them lower it into the ground. But my fingers were moving anyway, typing out his name. Leonard. I couldn't even manage a question mark. I just sent the word. I watched the screen, not breathing. The message status changed to delivered. And then they appeared. The 3 little dots bubbling in a gray oval. Someone was typing back. I think I stopped breathing. I was watching those dots, bouncing, bouncing. He's typing, and then they vanished. Just gone. The screen was blank again. No, I whispered. No, come back. I was about to throw the phone across the room, convinced I'd finally lost my mind, when it buzzed in my hand again. A new message. From Leonard. Why can't I see you? I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the hardwood floor. I couldn't pick it up. I just sat there, frozen, staring at the ceiling of my dark bedroom. This wasn't a scam. It wasn't a dream. It was something else. Something impossible. I eventually leaned over and grabbed the phone. I looked at the thread. The last message I'd sent him, 15 years ago, was still there. Drive safe. Love you. And right below it, tonight's messages. The clock on the wall read 3:09 a.m. My son had been dead for 15 years. His phone, his number, it had all been disconnected in 2011. I knew that for a fact. I'd been the one who'd called the phone company. So how could a number that doesn't exist send me a message tonight? I didn't sleep, of course. How could I? I just sat on the edge of my bed until the first hint of gray light touched the blinds. My house here in Scottsdale is quiet. It's a nice home right on the edge of the desert, but it's an empty home. It's been empty for a long time. I finally stood up, my joints cracking in protest. I walked down the hall, my bare feet cold on the tile, and I stopped at his door. Leonard's room. I pushed it open. It's not a shrine, not really. I couldn't bring myself to change it. His old guitar is still in the corner, collecting a fine layer of Arizona dust one. His high school baseball cap is hanging on the bedpost. It smells like old books and the faint, dusty scent of a room that hasn't really been lived in. I ran my hand over the guitar. He loved this thing. And that's when the memory hit me, the one I pushed down every single day. The night he died, he'd wanted to borrow my car. His friend's car was unreliable, he'd said. I told him no. I was tired. I had an early morning, and I didn't want him driving into Phoenix so late. We argued. It wasn't a bad fight, but it was firm. He was annoyed. Fine, he'd said, and grabbed his keys to go with his friend anyway. That was the guilt I lived with. The what if I'd just given him my keys? I'd learned to live with it. I thought I had. Anyway, I built a life around the edges of that hole. I take my walks at sunrise before the heat sets in. I volunteer at the local thrift store on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I even get roped into video calls with my neighbor Nora's grandchildren too. It was a life. It was numb, but it was a life. Now, holding that phone in my hand, all of that careful numbness was gone. That text message didn't just break the silence. It reopened everything three. I went to my office and turned on the computer. I needed proof. I needed to know I wasn't crazy. I dug through my digital files until I found my old phone records. And there it was, a PDF from Verizon dated April 2011. Final statement for account ending in 7309. This number has been deactivated. I stared at the screen. Deactivated. 2011. It was 4:15 a.m. I didn't care. I picked up my phone and dialed Verizon support. I sat through the terrible hold music, tapping my fingers, my heart racing again. Finally, a man with a tired voice answered. Verizon, this is Mark. How can I help you? My voice was shaking. I could hear it myself. Hi, Mark. I have a strange question. I received a text message tonight from a number, an old number. It was my son's. I gave him the number. I could hear him typing. Okay, ma'am, he said, and I could hear the professional patience in his voice. I've checked the network, and that number doesn't exist. It's not registered to anyone. It's not active in any system. But it has to be. I insisted, my voice getting thin. I'm looking right at it. It came through at 3:04 a.m. Can you check? Can you check the tower? Can you see where it came from? Ma'am, he said, his voice a little gentler. There's nothing to check. If a number isn't in the network, it can't send a text. It's impossible. What you're probably seeing is a spoof text, a scammer faking the sender, ID. A scammer. The word felt cold, but a scammer who knew to type mom. I hung up the phone, feeling more alone than ever. The sun was starting to come up, painting the desert sky in pale pinks and oranges. It was all so normal, so beautiful. But in my hand, I held an impossibility. The phone company said it couldn't happen. My own records said it couldn't happen. My voice was just a whisper in the empty room. Then how did it send me a text at 3:04? I spent the next few hours in a fog, just sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the phone. The sun was up. The mailman came. The world was moving, but I was stuck at 3:04 a.m. I must have read the texts 100 times. Mom, it's freezing here. Why can't I see you? I tried to tell myself Mark from Verizon was right. It was a scam, a sick, complicated prank, but my heart wouldn't accept it. The lowercase mom was too real. Just as I was about to pour my first cup of coffee, at nearly 10 in the morning, the phone buzzed. It didn't just vibrate, it rang. It lit up the whole kitchen counter. Leonard was flashing on the screen. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. I just stared. It rang and rang and rang. My hand was frozen. I couldn't answer it. I was too terrified. What if I heard his voice? What if I heard nothing? Finally, it stopped. The screen went dark. A second later, a notification popped up. Missed call from Leonard. And right after that, new voicemail from Leonard. My hand was shaking so violently I could barely unlock the phone. A new voicemail. My finger hovered over the play button. I had to know. I had to. I pressed it and put the phone on speaker, holding it away from me like it was a snake. At first, it was just static. A horrible, loud, crackling sound like an old AM radio caught between stations. I was about to hang up, flooded with disappointment and a strange kind of relief, when I heard it. Through the static, muffled and faint, like he was calling from a million miles away, was his voice. Just 4 words. "Can you hear me, Mom?" I dropped the phone. It hit the tile floor with a sharp crack. I stumbled back, my hand over my mouth, a sob finally breaking free. I was backed against the counter, shaking my head when I heard a key in the front door. "Meredith? It's just me. I brought those muffins from the bakery. You like." It was my neighbor, Nora. Nora is 70, a retired nurse, and the most practical, steady person I know. She walked into the kitchen and stopped, the bag of muffins dangling from her hand. "My goodness, Meredith, what on earth is wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think I just heard one," I whispered. I pointed at the phone on the floor. She picked it up, her brow furrowed. The screen was cracked, but it was working. "What is this?" Between sobs, I told her everything. The 3 a.m. texts, the lowercase Mom, the call to Verizon, and just now, the voicemail. She listened. She didn't interrupt. She just put the muffins down, poured me a glass of water, and made me sit. "Let me listen," she said. She played the voicemail. The static crackled. She held it up to her ear, concentrating. She played it again. "Mare," she said, her voice gentle. "That's just static. I don't hear anything." "No," I insisted, grabbing the phone from her. "It's there. It's him. Listen." I played it again, my finger jamming the volume button. "Can you hear me, Mom?" Nora just looked at me with this awful, sad pity. "Honey, I think you're hearing what you want to hear. You're exhausted. You're grieving. Maybe it's an old SIM card glitch or something from the cloud. You know, like an old message just recycled." "Nora, I know my son's voice." "I know you do," she said, putting her hand on mine. "But this isn't possible." She looked so worried. Not about the phone, but about me. She thought I was losing it. And for a second, I wondered if she was right. "Okay," she said, standing up. "Okay, let's get out of this house. Let's get some air. Let's go. Let's go to the cemetery. We'll go see him. It'll help ground us." I just nodded, desperate for anything real. We drove in silence. The cemetery was quiet, bathed in the warm morning sun. We walked the familiar path to his grave. The headstone was there, solid and real. Leonard Fleming, beloved son. I touched the smooth, carved letters. Nora was right. This was real. The texts, the call, it was a nightmare, a glitch. But then I looked down. Lying right across his name was a single, fresh white daisy. I looked at Nora. Did you bring that?" Her eyes went wide. She shook her head. "No, I thought you did." We looked around. The cemetery was empty. There was no one else here. The flower was perfect, not a single petal wilted, as if it had been placed there just moments ago. We hadn't brought it, and we were the only 2 people there. The daisy on the headstone settled something in me. Nora was still trying to find a rational explanation, but I knew. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was being contacted. When Nora dropped me off, I went straight to my desk. I wasn't going to let this go. I remembered a man named Tom Hendricks. He'd given a talk at the community center a while back about internet security, mostly helping people my age avoid online scams. He seemed patient and smart. I found his card and called him, half expecting him to tell me I was a crazy old woman. I told him the facts. I told him about the text at 3:04 a.m., the deactivated number, and the call to Verizon. I left out the voicemail and the daisy. I needed him to focus on the data, not the emotion. Mrs. Fleming, he said, his voice kind but professional. 99 times out of 100, this is what we call a ghost scam. A scammer spoofs a number from old public records. They send a vague, emotional text, wait for a grieving person to reply, and eventually they'll ask for money. He didn't ask for money, I said, my voice steady. He asked why he couldn't see me, and he used his old punctuation. He wrote Mom with a lowercase m and 2 dots. Mom. Can a scammer find a detail like that? There was a long pause on the line. That, Tom said slowly, is very specific. Most scams aren't that detailed. Look, if you'll let me, I can try to trace the metadata on the original message. I can't promise I'll find anything, but I can see where the signal claimed to come from. I gave him everything he needed. He called me back 2 hours later, and his professional, patient tone was gone. He sounded unsettled. Meredith, he said, I found the ping. My stomach tightened. A scammer in another country. No, he said, that's the problem. The message didn't come from a computer bank or an overseas server. The metadata shows it pinged from a cell tower, a specific, defunct cell tower. I held my breath. Where? It's a long way from you. It's up near Flagstaff. An old, abandoned tower on a deserted stretch of I-10. I didn't need to look at a map. My blood ran cold. That was the exact stretch of highway where Leonard's accident had happened. I have to go there, I said instantly. Now, hold on, Tom said quickly. That's not a good idea. That area is remote, and that tower has been offline for at least a decade. It shouldn't have the power to transmit anything. This is probably just a digital echo, a server error. I don't care what it should be, I said. I know what it is. I'm going. He must have heard the determination in my voice, because he sighed. Okay, but you are not going alone. I'll pick you up. Tomorrow morning. Early. The drive the next day was long and silent. Tom was in his 40s, with kind eyes that now looked worried. We left Scottsdale and the familiar world behind, heading north into the high, empty desert. It was the same route Leonard had driven that night. As we drove, Tom tried to gently talk me out of it. It's likely just a data collision, Meredith. An old message gets stuck in a server cache for years, and then some random system update finally pushes it through. It's rare, but it's not impossible. And it just happens to come from the tower closest to where he died. At 3 a.m., I asked, looking out the window. He didn't have an answer. I just stared at the blur of the desert. He loved this drive. I whispered, mostly to myself. He said it cleared his head. He'd roll the windows down, blast his music. My voice cracked, and I stopped. Tom just kept driving. An hour later, we were in the middle of nowhere. The tower is just off the next exit, Tom said, slowing the car. By that old, boarded-up rest stop. It was then that I saw it. Out in the scrub, maybe 100 yards from the highway. Faint flashes of light, like sunlight hitting a piece of glass. But the sky was overcast. It was a quick, rhythmic flash. Do you see that? I asked, pointing. Tom squinted, probably just a reflection off some old bottle. But it wasn't. It was steady. Flash, flash, flash. My phone, which I was clutching in my lap, suddenly buzzed. My whole body jumped. I looked down at the screen. A new message. From Leonard. Mom, I see the lights too. I showed the phone to Tom. His face went pale. He pulled the car over onto the gravel shoulder, right next to the boarded-up rest stop. Meredith, what does that mean? He asked, but he was already getting out of the car. The lights, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He sees the lights. He's here. I got out and stood on the cracked pavement. The air was still. The flashing was coming from a patch of dried-up creosote bushes and sand, about 50 yards from the road. Tom grabbed a heavy flashlight from his trunk, even though it was daytime, and we started walking. Every step felt heavy. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. This was it. This was where his car where it had stopped. It's coming from over here, Tom said, pushing aside a dry, thorny branch. And then we saw it. It wasn't a bottle. It was a memorial cross. One of those simple, white metal ones people put up on the side of the road. It was almost completely buried by sand and time. We put it up a month after the funeral. I hadn't been back in almost 10 years. It was rusted and bent, but it was his. Tucked into the corroded metal base, almost hidden, was a small, dark object. That's what was catching the light. Tom knelt, his hands careful, and pulled it free. My hand flew to my mouth. It was Leonard's old cell phone. It was an old brick, a model from before smartphones. The screen was shattered. The case was cracked and filled with rust and dirt. It was the phone he'd had with him that night. But how? I stammered. It should have been. I thought the police had it. In evidence. Maybe it was thrown from the wreck. Tom said, his voice quiet. Maybe it's been lying here, inside this cross for 15 years. He was turning it over in his hands, his professional curiosity taking over. This thing is destroyed. The battery's been dead for, well, forever. He looked at me, then back at the phone. This is crazy, he muttered. He went back to the car and came back with his work bag. He pulled out a small toolkit and a device that looked like a portable battery. It's a universal power kit, he explained, his hands working quickly. I can try to hook it directly to the phone's internal contacts, bypass the dead battery. It's 1,000,000 to 1 shot, but he attached 2 small clips to the phone's corroded terminals. Nothing happened. It's dead, Meredith. I'm sorry. He was about to unhook it when the shattered screen flickered. Just once. A faint blue-white light. Wait, he said. He wiggled the connection. The screen flickered again, stronger this time, and then, impossibly, it lit up. It was broken and spiderwebbed, but it was on. And it was open to a text message thread. To Mom. My knees gave out. I stumbled, and Tom grabbed my arm to hold me up. I couldn't take my eyes off that screen. I could see a line of text, a draft. Mom? And underneath it, another one. It's so dark here. Please come find me. Oh, God, I sobbed. Oh, Leonard, he was trying to call me. Meredith, Tom said. His voice was strained. Hollow. Look at the timestamp. I squinted through my tears. I could barely make it out. It says 3:04 a.m. I said, confused. It was 3:04. No, Tom said, his hand shaking. Meredith, look at the date. I looked again. It wasn't a date from 15 years ago. The timestamp read 3:04 a.m. Last night. The screen flickered one last time and went dark. We just stood there in the absolute silence of the desert. Tom, the man of logic and data, was white as a sheet. He finally let go of my arm. That phone, he said, his voice barely audible, had no battery. It had no signal. It's been in that box for 15 years. It shouldn't have been able to send anything. It shouldn't even be able to turn on. What we just saw, that isn't possible. Tom, and I barely spoke on the drive back. What was there to say? He was a man who lived in a world of data and logic, and that world had just been turned upside down. I just held the dead, broken phone in my lap, my knuckles white. He dropped me at my door, just looked at me, and said, "Take care of yourself, Meredith." He didn't know what else to do. I walked into my empty house. It felt different. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was expectant. I went straight to the junk drawer in my kitchen, the one where all the old cables and chargers go to die. I rummaged through it, my hands tossing aside old cords, until I found it, an ancient-looking charger with the right-sized plug. I didn't know why I was doing it. The phone was a wreck. Tom himself had said it was destroyed, that his battery pack was the only reason it had turned on at all. But I had to try. I plugged the charger into the wall by my bed and carefully, gently, plugged it into the phone's corroded port. Nothing. The screen was black. Of course it was. I left it there. I didn't get changed. I didn't eat. I just sat in the armchair in my bedroom, watching that dead phone on the nightstand as the hours passed. I was holding a vigil. I must have dozed off because I woke with a start. The room was that deep pre-dawn blue, and the phone screen was on. It wasn't bright, just a faint, flickering glow. I got on my knees by the bed. It wasn't a text message this time. It was just one thing, a single icon in the middle of the shattered screen. An audio file. Underneath it, 2 words, "Mom, listen." My thumb was shaking so badly, I missed it the first time. I pressed it again. There was no static. Not this time. It was his voice. It was Leonard. It wasn't muffled. It wasn't distant. It was him. Warm, clear, a little deeper than I even remembered, just as he sounded when he was 22. "Mom," he said, and the sound of that one word, said in that familiar, loving way, broke me. The tears started, but I didn't make a sound. I just listened. "I see you," he said, his voice so calm, so peaceful. "You've been walking around with that hole in your heart for so long. You keep that light on, all these years, thinking I was lost in the dark." I clutched my chest. The car. The argument. My guilt. "I wasn't lost, Mom," his voice continued, gentle and sure. "I was okay. I couldn't get through. I wasn't freezing. You were. You were frozen in that night." I was sobbing, my whole body shaking, but it wasn't a sad cry. It was a release. It was 15 years of what-ifs, and if only just pouring out of me. He knew. He knew I'd blamed myself for not giving him my car. He knew I'd been punishing myself every single day. "Mom, you kept the light on all these years. I wasn't lost. I just needed you to forgive yourself." There was a pause, just a breath of silence. "It's time, Mom. It's time to let it go. Please, Mom, live again." The audio file ended. The screen was still glowing. My tears were dripping onto the phone. I needed to hear it again. I needed to. I lifted my finger to press play one more time. And right before my eyes, the icon, it just vanished. It deleted itself. Then the screen flickered, sparked once by the charging port, and went black. This time, I knew it was for good. I picked up the phone. It was just a cold, dead piece of plastic and rust. But it didn't matter. He wasn't in the phone. He wasn't in the grave. He was somewhere else. And he was okay. And for the first time since that horrible night on I-10, I finally, truly believed it. I was okay, too. That night, I finally slept. It wasn't the drugged, heavy sleep of exhaustion I'd had for 15 years. It was light. It was real rest. When I woke up, the sun was streaming in, and the first thing I saw was the dead, broken phone on my nightstand. I picked it up, held it for a moment, and then I placed it gently in my bedside drawer. Not to hide it, just to keep it safe. A few weeks passed. The house felt different. It didn't feel empty anymore. It just felt quiet. The heavy, Oppressive silence was gone. The air felt lighter. I found myself humming while I made coffee. I hadn't done that in years. One day, I was driving past the Scottsdale Community Youth Center, and I saw a sign on the lawn. Volunteers needed. I pulled over. I hadn't just been told to live again. I'd been shown how. The next week, I started. They put me in charge of helping coordinate some of the after-school programs. One of them was a driver safety class for new teenage drivers. The old me would have run from that room. It would have been too painful, too close to the bone. But I sat in the back, listening to the instructor talk about road awareness and speed. After the class, I found myself talking to a few of the kids, a group of lanky 16-year-old boys who reminded me so much of Leonard it made my heart ache, but in a good way. I told them about my son. I told them he was a good driver, but that one night, one bad decision by his friend changed everything. I shared his story, not as a ghost story, but as a real one. And they listened. When I got home that evening, I walked down the hall and stopped at his door. I went in. I picked up his old guitar, the one that had been gathering dust for 15 years. I ran my hand over the strings, and they made a dull, tuneless sound. I found an old case in his closet, wiped the dust off both, and gently laid the guitar inside. I closed the latches. It wasn't sad. It didn't feel like I was losing him again. It just felt finished. It felt right. I was packing away the grief, but I was keeping the love. Later that night, I was sitting on my couch, just scrolling through my phone. I was looking at old pictures, the ones I had saved from my computer. Leonard at his high school graduation, beaming. Leonard at the beach, covered in sand. I swiped to the next photo, and my thumb just stopped. It was a photo I had never seen before. It wasn't old. It was new. It was Leonard. He was standing by the desert memorial, the white metal cross. But he wasn't 22. He looked timeless. He was wearing his favorite flannel shirt, the one he was buried in. And he was smiling. A real, bright, happy smile looking right at me. The desert sun was behind him. It was a clear, perfect photo. My hand went to my mouth, but I wasn't scared. I just smiled, my eyes filling with tears. "You found your way home, sweetheart," I whispered to the screen. I set the phone down on the cushion next to me. I closed my eyes, just soaking in the feeling, the peace. And then, softly, my phone vibrated. Just once. It played a sound I hadn't heard in ages, Leonard's old text tone. That silly little bloop bloop sound he'd chosen. My eyes snapped open. I picked up the phone. The screen was black. There was no notification, no text, no missed call, just the echo. And I knew it was done. He was at peace. And so was I. My story, it's not really about a haunted cell phone. Not really. It's about love. And it's about guilt. I spent 15 years frozen, punishing myself for an argument, for a set of car keys. I thought my grief was a monument I had to build and maintain for the rest of my life. But grief doesn't end. I know that now. It changes shape. It stops being a heavy, cold stone you have to carry, and it becomes a part of you, like a hand you hold. Sometimes I think love just finds a way to reach across, to send that one message we need to hear. Maybe it's a dream or a song on the radio, or maybe, if you're a stubborn old woman like me, it's a text message from a dead phone in the middle of the desert. It's just a reminder, I think, that we're still connected, that they're okay, and that we're allowed to be okay, too. It makes me wonder, if you've lost someone you love more than anything, and they could send you one last message. Just one. What do you think it would say? What would you need it to say? And if your phone lit up at 3 a.m, would you answer? 7. This was my story, and I'm so grateful I could share it with you. If it touched your heart or made you think of someone you love, I'd ask you to please share it with someone else who might need to hear it. And please leave a comment below. I'll be reading them. Tell me what you think that message would say. These stories, they're how we keep our loved ones with us. Don't forget to like this video. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, please subscribe to our channel. It means the world to us. Lastly, remember to download this wonderful book called Coming Back to Myself, 60 Liberating Truths to Find Yourself Again. You'll find it in the pinned comment below. Now, if you like this story, go ahead and click on the next video appearing on your screen, because in it is a story of betrayal and revolt like you've never seen before on Her Kindle Stories. Thank you for watching.